And we have our very own Eric Schatzker right now to join us. He spoke with the incoming CEO a while ago, back in June, and you had the good fortune, the foresight to talk to him about a couple of big picture issues. What did you focus on?
Well, we spent time talking about Morgan Stanley's merger of its brokerage business with Citigroup Smith Barney, which had just been completed at the time.
A game changer, according to many people.
Right. Big for Morgan Stanley because Morgan Stanley wanted to get bigger in the brokerage business, wanted to focus more on retail investors, wanted to get away from the institutional focus and the prop trading that got it into so much trouble during the credit crisis. At the same time, we talked about strategy. What's Morgan Stanley going to be going forward, for example? Big questions. Because of having dialed back risk, Morgan Stanley was generating so much less trading revenue, for example, the Goldman Sachs and J.P. Morgan. And, of course, we also talked about one of the most contentious issues on Wall Street, which was executive compensation.
Of course.
Now, it took a little while, actually, to get James Gorman to say, I would hesitate to say anything meaningful, because he said many meaningful things, but to get into a position where he was willing to acknowledge that Morgan Stanley, in fact, over time was going to end up paying people less than it had before the crisis. One of the things when you talk to so many people on Wall Street, including James Gorman, is that you know, the guys on the inside don't feel that that much has really changed, which is extraordinary, because if you listen to, if you read the things that John Mack, for example, says, it sounds as though they were staring into the abyss.
Well, let's take a listen.
I'm not sure, in fact,
I think we have it.
We actually have it now. Yep. We were going to bring you a little bit of an excerpt from the interview with James Gorman, so let's get it rolling right now.
Well, I think, as our CEO John Mack has said repeatedly and in front of Congress, clearly the compensation structure across much of financial services got out of whack over the last several years. Morgan Stanley reacted to that, and our obligation is to our shareholders, our employees and our clients, irrespective of what other broader industry measures may be put in place. So we instituted a clawback program to ensure that individuals who made bad bets would live with the results of that bet over time. We pay all of our employees in a heavy amount of their compensation is in equity of the firm, and that equity vests over multiple years. So many of the initiatives you're hearing talked about are things we've actually put in place. And our CEO, as you know, was not compensated for the last 2 years, and several other executives for the last year.
Okay, well, you are, to a degree, in that camp. You're among those whose salaries was raised. Other people at Morgan Stanley getting more salary in lieu of a bonus because of the restrictions in place under TARP. Now that you're free of TARP, will you keep those salaries higher as a result of the moves that were made recently?
Well, put it in perspective, salaries are still a relatively small percentage of total compensation. But the reality is that employees they have cash flow needs, they have basic family needs and expenses that they've got to live by. And we felt it was appropriate to make an adjustment which was from, by industry standards, artificially low salaries to make it more balanced between the salary and bonus.
Okay, but now that you're free of TARP, will bonuses be lower?
Well, bonuses will be based upon the performance of the business, and bonuses will have, as I said, the equity component, the clawback component, and will operate under what everybody would consider appropriate and reasonable compensation.
Well, but James, I mean, allow me for a moment to say that appropriate and reasonable is exactly the same terms that your firm would have used 2 years ago. So what's appropriate and reasonable today?
Well, I don't know that a lot has changed at Morgan Stanley over the last 2 years. We've become a Fed holding company for sure, but we've always paid our employees based upon the competitive pressures in the marketplace and the job that they're doing. What we've changed now is the mix of compensation from bonus to more salary and the clawback of those compensation payments.
So under a competitive scenario, is it possible, with about 20 seconds before we have to go to break, for a Morgan Stanley employee to make the same bonus in good times going forward that he did in good times in the past?
I would expect the overall bonus levels to be lower.
All right, that is James Gorman. He is the incoming CEO at Morgan Stanley. He's going to be taking over on January 1st, replacing John Mack, who's going to remain chairman. So, Scarlett, we're going to have much more of that interview with James Gorman, specifically what the future for Morgan Stanley's trading business is. We talked about that in June. It's a big question for Morgan Stanley going forward.
Absolutely. Just a taste of what's to come later on. Thank you.